Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Editor's Note. I'm Jonathan Hassan, and in today's edition, we are delighted to be joined by Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence of Mossad, as well as a long list of other positions in the intelligence community. You have one of the most remarkable stories, of course, with regard to also the Yom Kippur War, among others. And I think you were of the generation that actually fought to conquer the Hermon Mount, or the peak of Hermon Mount.
On the last day of the war.
Well, it's those who are now there in light of the forward defense doctrine of Israel post-October 7th, that is, after the fall of the Damascus regime on December 8th of last year, have managed to make it up there very rapidly. They haven't fought and sacrificed what you and your platoon had to endure. I think we have it on TV7's Watchmen Talk, where your discussion was quite elaborate on this, together with Amir Oren. I encourage all of you at home, scroll down into the episode with Amnon Sofrin on Watchmen Talk. The discussion there was really fascinating, to say the least, and it shows the depth of the sacrifice that Israel has made in the face of Syrian aggression, in the face of other countries, of course, launching premeditated and, of course, surprise attacks against the state of Israel. Unfortunately, lessons learned have not been completely implemented over the years, and we had faced October 7th. But 2 years later, now we are at a stage where the United States is spearheading a 21-point plan for the Gaza Strip, believing it may indeed have the most unique of opportunities to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, something that Hamas continues to vehemently reject. But nonetheless, there is some prevailing optimism in the air. What is your take on that?
I think that this optimism should be looked very carefully, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Hamas is not going anywhere. If we had any thoughts about Hamas leaving Gaza Strip and going into exile and all the leadership and so on, it won't happen. They will stay there. Now, Gaza Strip will be controlled probably by what we call a government or committee of technocrats. Hamas has influence upon the people that are being chosen to be part of these technocrats. That means that these people are identified with him in some way, to some extent. I don't really know to what extent, but they have some identification with this organization.
50%?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the quantity, but
because there is a semantic discussion there, from what I understood.
Yeah. Now, Hamas will stay beyond the scenes. It won't dismantle totally. I don't believe that somebody will try to force him to do that. I mean, all the international forces that may get into Gaza Strip from Indonesia, from UAE, from other countries, I don't believe that they're going to risk themselves trying to dismantle Hamas. So it will keep some of its weapon systems. All the underground tunnels that are under its control, not under the IDF control, will not be dismantled, will not be destroyed. And therefore, Hamas will maintain some of its strength for the coming years as well.
So all this rhetoric that we're hearing coming out from, we just had Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who is the person who ultimately takes President Trump's words and translates them into practical realities. We had here Vice President J.D. Vance, the two envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who've been working very diligently on getting from A to D, not really recognizing what's in B, C, and E, or
correct,
in the process of that. But ultimately, all those people are coming with the narrative stating that, yes, Hamas will be demilitarized. It won't be expelled, naturally, since roughly 800,000 people are affiliated to Hamas in Gaza these days. And
Correct.
you can't expel 50% of the population of Gaza.
No, no.
But all in all, their messaging runs contrary to what you're saying.
I know, but there is a difference between speaking and between implementing. Okay? That means that Hamas has its own agenda. Hamas is not going to give up, is not waving the white flag, is not giving up, is not surrendering. It achieved, first of all, the ceasefire. They had to release all the people that were imprisoned in Gaza, under their captivity, but nevertheless, it's what we call a small payment for gaining ceasefire, for gaining what we call humanitarian aid coming into Gaza, under the supervision of the Americans. And they are now rebuilding their capabilities. Now, when the American administration says that Hamas is going to be dismantled, they don't really care and don't really know how to implement it. That means if you want to achieve that, you have to go house by house and trying to find out each one of the small squads and to dismantle them, and this won't happen. Because if we're going to try to do that by activating our soldiers, we're going to suffer a lot of casualties. And we're going to reopen the war one more time, to restart the war one more time. And the Americans don't allow us and won't allow us to do that one more time. They want to be in total ceasefire, peace, kind of peace, on their conception, not on ours, because ours is different. So, in the end of the day, we are going to face the problems for the coming years as well.
So, President Donald Trump just returned from Malaysia. And during his flight back to the United States, he made a pit stop for refueling Air Force One in Qatar, in Doha. The Emir of Qatar and the Prime Minister went, of course, immediately to the plane to show their faces and get some president chime, and during the course of which there was a brief photo op ahead of their meeting, during the course of which President Trump praised them for having a pivotal role in all that had to do with implementing the so-called peace plan, as, of course, is perceived in Washington these days. Now, Qatar equals Hamas.
Right.
And
the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, it's a different branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, theologically
more
wise.
More affiliated with Hamas. I agree, totally.
They're pretty much Hamas, and that's the political branch. This is the military arm and the subsidiary, so to speak. So naturally, when we're talking about Qatar and the United States and having this unique relationship that was brought forth during the Biden administration, designating Doha as a major non-NATO ally in 2021, the whole Middle East is basically shifting. And it seems that way since obviously Israel is keen on its national security interests being preserved and reaching a accommodated solution to the problems emanating out of the Gaza Strip. But at what expense and at what cost?
I think that if you look at Qatar and you look at Turkey, which are very similar one to one another, that means that Turkey is also supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and supporting Hamas and against Israel, and they don't like us and we want to be our friends, even though President Trump is trying to push them to get closer to Israel, but nevertheless they don't like us, basically. And that means that these two countries are supporting Hamas, and these two countries are going to support Hamas on for the coming years and to allow Hamas and not to allow us to get rid of Hamas in some way. All our aspirations that Hamas is going to be expelled and get out of Gaza Strip will never happen. They will stay there with encouragement of these two countries that are going to take part, an active part in what happens in Gaza Strip, on maintaining what we call the ceasefire and the rebuilding of Gaza Strip.
how is the Trump administration blind to this? Because I do speak with friends in the Trump administration in key positions, no less. And, over the years, they told me immediately also after Qatar normalized relations with the other GCC countries, namely the Saudis, Emiratis, and such, that the father was the problem, right? The emir at the time, and that he pledged to move to the background. That was the arrangement with the Saudis. Not only to move to the background, but to relinquish everything to his son Tamim, who is currently the emir, the prince of Qatar, of Doha. And as such, everything was good and well, and they're no longer potent supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood and so on and so forth. Now, we both know that that is a joke.
Of course it is.
But the United States is not naive.
No, they have other interests than we have.
What are they?
I will tell you. They are looking at what we call each one of these parts, of these components, of this piece they call in the Middle East, or stabilizing the Middle East, as what we call as business. Not look at it at what we call our national interest or
Transactional.
That means that, first of all, they want to be friends with Hamas, with the Qatar, because they have the greatest or the biggest garrison inside Qatar, and they have to preserve it because it controls the what we call the Persian Gulf, and controlling, on the other hand, of Iran, or what we call, we can jump from them to Iran. And
The Al Hudaid Air Base, which is the aerial component, since there is also the naval component in Bahrain.
Correct. So they have this interest, first of all. Second, they're willing to go and make business with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia. They signed a lot of deals with these two countries that are going to invest a lot of money inside the US. And it's important for President Trump and his administration that money will be invested and supply what we call jobs for people that will be working inside US with this money. And therefore, they're not blind, but they prefer this one on our interests. It's that simple as that.
Realpolitik 101. With that being said, everything goes from the prism. It's not only transactional in the essence of business orientation. It's more of a strategic power competition level type of business. Since the majority of the major investments beyond the military capabilities that are obviously important to the United States for interoperability reasons, for other type of reasons, to ensure that they stay also in the sphere of influence under the United States, there is, of course, the critical chip infrastructure that they're going all to heavily invest in. Chip conductors and others. At a time when China is leading right now in this area. So obviously the United States is very keen on those investments.
Sure.
It is public money that both Washington and Beijing have been vying for quite some time. But this is just one part to a very broad scheme of strategic power competition to which Israel is invaluable. What has gone astray?
Israel is important because, first of all, it's the only democracy in the Middle East, the real democracy in the Middle East. Second, what we call the historical relations between the U.S. and the administration, each administration, and the Israeli governments is very solid and very, very strong. And they won't give up Israel. But to what extent? Now they imposed this deal on Israel. Not willingly, this government agreed to all these 21 points, which I don't see part of them being implemented for the next coming years. But they imposed it on this government, and they forced us for a ceasefire and to stop fighting, and to stop fighting anywhere. They want to stabilize the Middle East. They want kind of peace in the Middle East, something that is ambitious. but I'm not sure that it can be implemented all over the Middle East, because we still have Iran, we still have Hezbollah, we still have other entities like the Houthis in Yemen and whatever. So, therefore, Israel is important, but Israel is what we call the main ally on the security issues. When you look at what we call business-oriented issues, this is of course Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other countries as well, and they have this mutual defense pact with Qatar. Now they're going to sign it with Saudi Arabia, and by that ensuring that first of all they create some kind of a block against Iran on one hand and against China on the second hand.
Now, within that context, because I think it's more than just security related, the unique relationship
With Israel.
Since we do also see, of course, NVIDIA announcing just this past week of tripling the size of their engagement in Israel, where the high tech and not only high tech, also some low tech, but the high tech component of Israel in the areas of R&D, in the areas of other aspects. Israel is the leading country to invest in R&D per capita globally.
I agree.
Those are aspects that are quite transactional, let alone the fact that the majority of Israel's strategic assets, going from the offshore gas reservoirs and others, are owned by American multinational corporations. So there is a lot of aspects, a lot of assets in Israel that cause it to be a national strategic interest for the United States, let alone the religious component to it, where the evangelical community in particular, but the Christian community also at large, is very keen on seeing the security of the state of Israel, and also the Jewish community in the United States, which has, of course, a very strong relationship here. But nonetheless, we do see today countries such as Qatar, countries such as China, as Russia, as other actors, even Liberia, investing hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in swaying American foreign policy towards their interests. While, just to put things in perspective, everybody speaks about AIPAC investing in opinions in the United States, which is, of course, quite sizable. In relative terms, it's nothing compared to what Qatar is investing in.
I agree.
I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars that the Qataris are investing in the education system, in a lot of other sectors.
Universities
and so on. $258 million in lobbying on the Hill, which is double, if not triple, what AIPAC and Israel together are investing in this.
I agree.
How can this be at a time when, there's so much rhetoric, so much disinformation against Israel?
I think that the American administration ignores what happens with Qatar, with the investment of Qatar inside the US. It's not only Qatar, because other countries as well do that. And they gain a lot of influence in the universities, mainly students and so other people as well. And we see the demonstrations in the university, in the campuses, in other places. Everybody is mumbling the slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And when you ask them which kind of sea or what kind of river, nobody knows exactly what.
But that's only in the English language.
Yeah, of course.
In Arabic, they say, min maya al-maya, Palestine Arabiya. From the water to the water.
Palestine is going to be Arabic.
Arab.
Yeah, sure.
It's not about, it's about ethnic cleansing.
No, it's not going to be free.
Right.
They want to throw us to the sea, see if we can swim to Cyprus or some other place as well, and to make sure that we're not going to come back to Israel, because it's their land in that concept. Now, the difference between us and between the Arabs is that they have a lot of patience. They don't have to see it happen. We don't have, no. No. They don't have to see it happening tomorrow. It can happen within 100 years, within 200 years. Doesn't really matter. It's a process that has to be launched, and while on the move, it will achieve its goal. We have to see immediately something that's going to be implemented tomorrow, next year, at the most, not more than that. And this is the big difference between us and them. And they invest for the long run, for building up the capacity, for building up their base of what we call supporters to the idea. And this is the main problem within the Americans. And the Americans are not trying to stop them, even though President Trump announced that some of the universities are not going to be funded by the federal government. But nevertheless, it's not a problem.
Well, it's for the next 3 years, right?
Yeah, because the Qataris are there and the Saudi Arabians and other countries as well.
They invest billions, and it is impacting.
Sure.
It's impacting Western civilization at large, not only the relationship towards Israel and the foreign policy that is counterproductive to U.S. national security interests, to put it quite plainly.
Correct.
But let's broaden the discussion, because I think it has also... first of all, as you mentioned earlier, and I think it's very important to point out, the Qataris are also not in the top of the line. We do have the Chinese there. We have the Russians there. The Iranians are investing heavily. The Saudis are investing heavily. So it is a concerted effort to which one thing is a common denominator to all those countries. They're all totalitarian in essence, which is ironic. Israel is the only democracy, basically, alongside the European nations that also have their endeavors, of course. But that
within the Middle East, it's only democracy.
Right.
A real democracy.
A real democracy. Now, we don't have very much time left, but we still need to touch on this because it's important. Now, as you say, Israelis are impatient in essence. So are the Americans. When they want to see something happen, they want to see it happen now. The French happen to be very similar to that as well.
Yeah.
And they're both involved.
It's what we call a Western thinking.
It's Western thinking. Result-driven, immediate.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's Western thinking.
Ulterior motives don't matter that much, as Tom Barrack says, about not knowing what the ulterior motives of everybody are, but he has a designated objective and he wants to fulfill it. However, he does see what's happening in Lebanon. He doesn't see the implementation of the demilitarization, rather the disarming of the Iranian proxy Hezbollah happening on a rapid pace as was intended by Washington. And they're starting to lose patience. And they're starting to signal that unless you do this, Israel may intervene. What are we to take out of it?
First of all, I think that the Lebanese government doesn't have the ability to dismantle Hezbollah. And they don't intend to do that. They declare that this is their ambition, that this is the goal. But nevertheless, the Lebanese armed forces are not capable of doing that. And the chief of these Lebanese armed forces said that if we are going to have what we call a civil war with Hezbollah, I'm going to resign. I'm not going to do that. So they're stuck in the middle, declaring something, but they don't really intend and have the ability to do that. They dismantle some of the Palestinian refugee camps with the agreement or the encouragement of Abu Mazen that visited Lebanon and ordered these people to do that.
To buy time?
Yeah, to buy time. But on the other hand, they don't really touch Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is not going to willingly dismantle itself. Now, of course, they have the encouragement of Iran, even though Iran is far away right now because they cannot cross via Syria or come via the sea or air because they are blocking.
En masse. They're still doing it, but it's trickling in.
Yeah, but we are blocking most of these attempts. And therefore, Hezbollah is going to rebuild its capabilities slowly but surely. And now we have evidence that they are going to try to get to the northern part of the Litani River, northern bank of the Litani River, and to rebuild its capabilities. And just yesterday, I heard that one of the senior officers in the Northern Territorial Command declaring that we are not going to allow Hezbollah to rebuild its capabilities, we are going to take action. Now, when President Trump threatens the Lebanese government and the Lebanese president, they don't really intend that Israel is going to act. I'm not sure that Israel has now the ambition and the capability, or no, not capability, the ambition and the willing to go into another war with Lebanon. Okay? Because we are now on a ceasefire, we are now trying to reorganize our armed forces and to rebuild our capabilities and so on and so on. And I'm not sure that we are going now to be engaged in another war in Lebanon. So when President Trump is threatening, it's like threatening on Hamas. If you don't release the people that are being imprisoned in Gaza Strip, gates of hell are going to be opened. And what happened? Nothing.
Well, there was the attack on Gaza City,
No,
which started to up the pressure.
Very later on.
But it took time, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see that we are going to.
So if President Trump asks Israel to engage in Lebanon, would Israel comply?
Depends on what kind of attack. If it's going to be an aerial attack, very precise.
An aerial campaign.
Yeah, aerial campaign, very precise and very focused, it may happen. For a period of time, for a limited period of time. Okay? But to get in with what we call a ground maneuver, I don't see it happening.
Of course, this may be a deceptive statement, and I wouldn't encourage Hezbollah to find out whether or not it's true. With that being said, I'd like to thank you, General Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence of the Mossad intelligence agency. And I'm sure that Hezbollah doesn't want to test the other type of beeper operations you had organized for them in the past. But nonetheless, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well and highlight that TV7 Israel is a donation-based organization, a ministry in essence, and therefore, if you're blessed by the content of our programs, I'd like to encourage you to support TV7 Israel with a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.